They thought his death would silence the crescent, but in the smoke of Wayne Adaga, another voice rose. She was not a commander of armies, nor a wielder of steel. She was his widow, his queen, and soon his legacy. Where others saw defeat, she saw inheritance, and on that broken field, the Lioness of Harari first bared her teeth. Night still clung to Wayne Adaga. Survivors wandered like shadows among corpses, their grief so heavy it seemed to sink into the mud. Bati Del Wambara moved through them quietly, her bronze and rust robe soaked, her ochre turban bound tight, her eyes steady. She touched no weapon, yet wherever she walked, men lifted their heads. The widow of Imam Ahmad carried no command scroll, no title of war, but her silence commanded more than shouts. To some, she was grief made flesh. To others, the anchor they had lost. In the storm's chaos, a queen was beginning to take form. Whispers spread that Adal was finished. Portuguese voices claimed the crescent had been shattered forever. But around a dim fire in the valley, Bati gathered what leaders remained: Somali horsemen, Afar scouts, Harari emirs. She stood before them, cloak plastered in mud, and declared, "His blood is not the end. It is the seed." Some doubted, some wept, but her voice cracked the silence. She forbade them to scatter, to vanish into the mountains. "We will not vanish. We will not bow." In that moment, she seized not just their ears, but their wills. Before leaving Wayne Adaga, Bati ordered that the fallen of Adal not be left to vultures. Survivors dug shallow graves with bare hands, covering brothers with stones, whispering prayers into the storm. She moved among them, touching shoulders, whispering that their sacrifice was not wasted. The Portuguese might write chronicles of their triumph, but she vowed their own people would write songs of remembrance. By firelight, her presence turned despair into reverence. The battlefield was no longer just a graveyard, it was a shrine. At dawn, the retreat began. Wounded limped in carts, women cradled children, soldiers carried broken spears. At the head of this caravan rode Bati, her husband's bloodied cloak tied across her saddle. She carried no banner, yet men whispered, "She carries him with her." Along the road, she gave water to the thirsty, steadied the weak, and met despairing eyes with her own fire. She was not leading soldiers, she was carrying people. And though the road back to Harari was long, each step pressed her deeper into destiny. In a village they passed, morale faltered. Men muttered of surrender, Women cried that the crescent had died. Bati stood before them all, the survivors and the villagers alike. She told them of his last breath, of his final words, of the Shahada, whispered in the rain. She spoke not of loss, but of inheritance. His fire is in us. Her words turned grief into resolve. Men who had been ready to throw down their spears instead beat them against shields, swearing oaths to fight again. The memory of the Imam was now her weapon, and she wielded it without fear. The retreat was no march of triumph, but of endurance. Rain turned paths into rivers of mud, food grew scarce, and wolves prowled the hills at night. Yet Bati shared the same bread as the poorest widow, the same fire as the youngest child. Her dignity became the glue of the caravan. The people whispered, "She does not sit apart, she walks with us." Though the way was cruel, the survivors found strength in her example. Each hardship bound them closer to her, making the widow of the Imam not just their leader, but their protector. The caravan crested the ridges as dawn broke. Behind Bati trudged weary soldiers, banners torn, faces gaunt. Before her lay Harari, unseen but burning in every mind. She raised no sword, but her presence was blade enough. Her cloak dragged through mud, but her chin was high. Those who watched whispered, "The lioness leads us now." She was no longer only a widow. She had become flame, bearer of the crescent, mother of legacy, queen not crowned by gold, but by survival itself. When at last Harari's walls appeared on the horizon, a murmur spread through the caravan like a lifeline. Women lifted children higher. Men straightened weary backs. Even the wounded pushed forward. Bati halted at the hilltop, turned and looked upon those who remained. Her silence was her vow. She had carried them from Wayna Daga not only as survivors, but as the seeds of renewal. From that day, the people of Harari would no longer see her as a widow of war, but as their lioness, the queen who bore the burden of both grief and hope. Imam Ahmad had died at Wayna Daga, but in his shadow rose Fatima bint Mahfuz. To enemies, she was a widow limping home. To her people, she was a lioness, a queen who refused to bow. The soil had drunk her husband's blood, but in her, it bore fruit. For even in the ashes of defeat, the flame still rose, and her name would carry it forward.